Hey, everybody. It's Carmela from Carmela's Rasslin Radio Relived. Thank you so much for joining us today. As you see right at this moment, I am alone. Okay. Jeannie's not with me. God bless her. She went to a super crazy match with Darren and Denise and Primal Fear. I was going to go with her, but I could not because we have a very special guest tonight for our show and I have to work tomorrow. So I don't think these old bones would make it. So she is out and about drumming up some more interviews for us. And Jeannie, we love you, miss you so much. The show is not the same without you. It never is. But in the meantime, we have a suitable substitute. We have one of our wrestling fans who was on a show before, and he is very learned, very knowledgeable in professional wrestling. And he's a very good friend of mine. And we're going to bring him on right now. We're going to talk about everything that's been going on. So everybody, please welcome Rich Schwartz. Hey, how you doing, Rich?
Hi, Carmela. Once again, thanks so much for having me today.
Oh,
I'm honored. I'm honored to be your co-host, and I know I have big shoes to fill with Jeannie. So, hi, Jeannie. And
oh,
if I
yep.
if I can do half as good as her, then today will be a
Oh, you're
success.
sweet. Yeah, she wears like size 12 or 13 shoes, So maybe 20. I
No, I
don't
didn't
know.
know.
Andre the Giant wore
Uh,
24, but we'll see. But yeah, Jeannie, we miss you and we're looking forward to you coming back. Later on, though, okay. Uh Rich and I are going to talk about a few things, but later on, we're going to have our guest who is Randy Hales from Memphis. He was a color commentator and interviewer, announcer right around the Jerry Lawler time, right around the time that we went there as our Squared Circle fan club. So we're going to talk a lot to him about a lot of good stuff. Um, okay, what I want to do right now, Rich, is I want to talk about May 3rd. We talked about that on the phone. May 3rd is coming up, and we're very excited. We are going to go to a fantastic show. Joel Goodhart is sponsoring a show. It's called One and Done. And we're just trying to muster up some more business, for the show. Everything, if you look on Facebook, there is a million advertisements. Bay Ragney has put up so much. So is Ryan Kavanaugh. Okay. And we're hoping that it pulls a lot of people in. Rich, are you going to that show?
well, I don't have tickets now, but I would love to go. I think that this will be a great testament to the history of what Joel did back in the day. And if I could just say something regarding that history, yeah, when I was in the fan club with you and Joel, I didn't really know Joel that well, so I was really friendly with you. So, Joel and I always said hello and shook hands and everything, and we're very cordial. But my
Mm-hmm.
my deep friendship was really with you. But that being said, I went to some of his TWA wrestling events, and I have to say, and I don't know if Joel remembers who I am. I think we're friends on Facebook, and I don't even I'm assuming Joel watches this podcast, but I just want to say that Joel did something that I wish that I could have done, and he took a risk and he lived his dream, and
Yes, he
he
did.
he decided that he was going to finance himself this startup wrestling promotion. And as in my profession, my occupation being a chief financial officer, I know for a fact that even back then and even today, most startup businesses do not succeed, and he took a risk, and I applaud him for doing that. And joel Joel deserves a place in the history books of professional wrestling, because if there was no TWA, Carmela, maybe, just maybe, there maybe never would have been an ECW.
That's true. I agree. I agree. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to help Joel and four other people go down in the history books of the 2300 arena, which brings us to the signing of the petition for the banner. Did you sign the petition yet?
Oh yeah,
Okay.
I signed
Well,
it. I
what we
signed it the last time I was on your show.
good. Well, what we need, see if you can get some friends to sign it. What we need is we need a lot of people to sign it. If I'm not mistaken, now I know that I'm going by what I think Joel told me. We only need like a little over 150, maybe more. So just get a friend. Just sign. How hard is it to click a link and put your name and say, done deal, you know? So that's what we're hoping everybody does. It's going to be a great show. There's a ton, and I am talking about a ton of wrestlers, old and new. Okay. Um, there's going to be a Wrestle Con from, I believe it's 12:30 or 12 to 3:30 or 12:30 to 3:30, something like that. Jeannie's always the one who jumps in with that stuff, you know, so I kind of let her do it. But then again, the show I believe starts at 7:30. It's called One and Done, and it's going to be great. It's going to be fantastic. And then after the show, there's going to be an after party at what was the old Marriott, and now it is a DoubleTree by Hilton, I believe. And anybody who has their stub from the show, not the WrestleCon, please understand that, not the WrestleCons, from the show, you will be permitted into the bar to hang out with the wrestlers and all of us. Jeannie and I are going to be there. You're going to be there. Joel's going to be there. A bunch of people are going to be there. Dear Lord, if it's anything like the old Marriott days, we are going to have a blast. Also, Joel has blocked off some a bunch of rooms, and you can get a room at a discount. So if you call to make a reservation for May 3rd that night, tell them you are part of One and Done, and don't lose that stub. Okay. Let's go from here now to Royal Rumble. Did you watch a Royal Rumble, Rich?
Oh yeah, I watched it, and
What did you think?
I I was underwhelmed, to be quite honest with you. I thought that, I mean, I thought there were some very good parts. I thought there were some not so very good parts.
Hmm.
I was extremely underwhelmed by the women's Royal Rumble. I didn't really think that it had a theme as to a build up. I think if the build up was to highlight the return of Charlotte Flair and her return from her injury, I think the fans the next night spoke volumes and rejected that with a rousing sound of boos. And
Yep.
so I think the intended outcome was not what they expected. And I would have to assume that the higher uppers at WWE who are writing the storylines will have to make some adjustment. They'll either embrace a heel turn, which it almost sounds like she's kind of done already, just based on the
Yeah.
reaction. But I was disappointed from the fact that, like, if you go back, I think it was the Royal Rumble the year before. Correct me if I'm wrong from a time period. Was really centered around Bailey wanting to win the Rumble and re-win the title at WrestleMania. So it was designed behind like a real theme there, and I didn't really see where there was a theme. And there were just a lot of rushed, I would say, participants that maybe a lot of people didn't recognize. If they
Hmm.
wanted to get if they wanted to get the shock value with Nikki Bella, I wasn't necessarily that impressed about it, to be honest with you. I liked the fact that they put Jordana Grace in. That I think they just signed her, if I'm not mistaken,
Yes,
from
they did.
TNA,
Yep. Yep.
right? And I think she has a tremendous future in WWE.
I think she does
Then,
too.
yeah, and they put a lot of NXT people in there. I was very impressed with the length of time that Roxanne Perez lasted.
Oh
I think
yeah.
that she really gave a great performance with the length of time that she was able to stay in there. But otherwise, I was underwhelmed by the Rumble. I thought that the by that match, I thought that the ladder match was great. I thought it was extremely violent, tremendous high spots, and how both of them could not have come out of it unscathed is just beyond me. They saved the Sami Zayn turn by Kevin Owens for the next night on Raw. You really didn't know where he was going there. Um, the men's Royal Rumble, total surprise. I had it narrowed down between Cena and Punk. It was going to be one of them. Jey Uso winning was a big surprise when you look at the crowd reaction to him, especially the next night on Raw. I think that it was a great move.
I
Number
think
one,
he's
it was
going to exactly. I think he's going to be a champion. I really do. Not to cut you off, I'm sorry, but I just wanted to reiterate on something you spoke about with the women's rumble. I was very disappointed that Charlotte won. I get the shock value. I get the money. Charlotte will draw money, period. And I get that, but I don't like the fact that she won, coming in Johnny come lately and then taking everything. I don't like Nikki Bella. I didn't like the fact that she was even there. I think it was a waste of talent. Okay. Um, I never did like her. I like Brie. I don't like Nikki. I think the NXT girls were amazing. As you said, Perez was amazing. They were all amazing. The Kevin Owens and Cody match, I thought was really a good match. Like you said, I think however they did that lateral thing where Kevin got his head stuck in it, I think at first his head was really stuck because if you notice, uh, Nick Aldis in the background went like this with his hands, and that is a definite sign that it's a real injury. Um, I think if it was played out, it was wonderful the way he did it. I really do. I'm a little bit ticked off a little bit because sometimes people are constantly putting down AEW when the WWE also has some things that they need to refurbish and revamp. AEW, and AEW has a soft spot in my heart. Will Ospreay is my guy. I mean, I think he is amazing. And I've questioned a lot of people, and I think maybe out of 20 people that you ask, 18 and a half love him. You get 1.5, it's not too crazy about him. But you were going to say something you had said to me today about Will Ospreay.
Yeah, I think that, and I wasn't aware that you're an AEW fan overall. And I think that when AEW started out, I think it was a great alternative. It was never going to be competition to WWE. I thought it was a great alternative. And when you think about the roots of how AEW was born,
Mm-hmm.
from the four guys, doing their own thing and financing their own show, and they sold the show out in an hour. But going back to Will Ospreay, I think he's a tremendous talent. But I also think that um, based on the buildup, based on his reputation coming in, based on all the expectations that you had about him, I really think that AEW has not served him well because I don't think they've done a great job promoting him by having him lose several matches in a row and really putting a major dent in any momentum that he was having. Now, it does seem that they're building his momentum back up. AEW in general, again, I loved watching it from the beginning. I think that they have gotten to the point lately, and I would say probably over the last year, that they don't have long-term storylines. They don't have long-term booking. The kind of books on the fly. And I think you have a person who owns the organization, who has unlimited money, who's a
Mm-hmm.
tremendous fan, and is running the organization as a fan, as opposed to coming up with logical long-term booking. Now,
Right.
I will say that I am intrigued by the tag team pairing of Will Ospreay and Kenny Omega.
Oh,
I
that's going
like
to be
Omega.
awesome.
Always like
That's,
Kenny Omega from day
yeah.
one. You didn't know at first if they were going to be friends or foes. It looks like they have one of, what do you call it, an unlikely alliance right now.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I think the potential there is unlimited as to what they could do
Oh,
with that.
it's amazing. When I saw the two of them climbing up those, scaffolds and all that and jumping off and all this stuff. I mean, yeah, I've seen it for 60 years. I've seen that stuff. But this kid, and I got to be honest with you because I know Will Ospreay's backstory. And that is the part that makes me love him so much as well. He's a very kind person. He's a good person. He has ADHD. He's a little bit dyslexic. He's already talked about that in many interviews. He's joked with him about himself rather in an interview, and he goes, "Well, I don't know why anybody wants to interview me, he said, because I can barely speak English, but he is so honest about that. And he's helped people who have disabilities. And I think that's amazing. And I also think that he is an incredible talent. Like, okay, seeing a high spot, like you just said, a high spot, all wrestlers do high spots at one point or another. Okay. Some wrestlers are just high spotters. All right. They just do it. But when Will Ospreay does a high spot, when he jumps off of something, like I've seen him do a corkscrew in the air while he's coming down, and to me personally, I just think he is amazing. And I agree with you that they're not using him to his full potential. And I do think they need to boost him up a lot because I think he can do a lot for the company. I really do. And like I said before, he still kind of works full time in Japan. But what I like about him is in England, he still wrestles for these little tiny gyms, little tiny places. He does things with the fans. There was a thing I saw on YouTube where he literally jumped into the audience at a club of some kind. They carried him around. Then he was standing up and they were holding him by his feet and walking around the building with him. He just relates to the people a lot. And the other thing I'm not a big fan of is they're always saying that AEW has empty arenas. Well, when AEW was in Wembley this past year, they sold out more of Wembley. It was about 55% sold out, but they sold out more of Wembley than WWE did when they had their old WrestleManias there. Okay. But nobody talks about that. Yes, there are empty spots, but WWE also has empty spots sometimes because they move people down. Maybe AEW doesn't do that as much anymore, or like they should. But he's amazing. I love, and I'm trying so hard to get him on my podcast. I got in touch with his agent, but she got back to me in the very beginning. Her name is Sharon. She got back to me in the very beginning, very enthusiastic, very wonderful, blah, blah, blah. But as soon as I said that it's just a local podcast, nothing fancy, nothing famous, she stopped answering me. So I'm going to ask you, Sharon, publicly to please return my emails. And if anybody knows anything about Will Ospreay and you hear me, tell him that I want him on my podcast, please. He's a great guy, and I think it would be an honor to have him on. But as far as AEW, I'm seriously impressed with a lot of what they're doing. I think, honestly, all they need, like you said, Rich, is a little brush up, and their stories are good. Their stories are good. WWE stories are good too, but the WWE sometimes kills a dead horse. They beat a dead horse. Let's put it that way. Their storylines last so long and it never changes, now hopefully the bloodline is done completely, but who knows? There's other Samoans that are going to come out. They still want to wrestle. They want to, but and AEW has a ton of Japanese and Asian wrestlers. And this next match, like you said, with Will Ospreay and Kenny Omega against Kyle Fletcher, and I have to make sure I say this right because I always mess it up. Kinosuke Takeshita. There you go. I said it right.
There you go.
That's going to be a great match. It really is. And also, they're coming. The AEW's coming to Philadelphia, I believe, on April 6th. And I was talking to Joel the other night, and he actually told me I thought they're going to be at the Wells Fargo, but they're not. They're going to be at a place in Temple. But unfortunately, a lot of the tickets are already sold, people. So get online there and start buying some tickets because if I ever go to see Will Ospreay at a wrestling match for AEW, this is where I want to sit. If you ever notice when he comes down the aisle, he always comes down the aisle, makes an immediate left, and always interacts with whoever that group is in the corner. Okay? I noticed this stuff. So, if I go see Will Ospreay, I want a front row seat, and I want it in that corner where he interacts with people, and I want to grab him by his head, and I want to say, do my podcast, But he's an awesome guy. He's a really good guy, and I like him a lot. So there. Let's talk a little bit about WrestleMania. Let's talk a little bit about the Elimination Chamber coming up. How do you think that's going to fare out, Rich?
It's interesting that you asked me that because I was actually going to segue into that when we were talking about the Rumble.
Okay.
So so here's how I envision it now. And again, this is strictly my own head that's looking forward and what I'd like to see if I was the one doing the booking. Um, and there's one thing I just want to get off my chest, and I'm really curious as to how you feel about it.
Go
Um,
ahead.
I, I have throughout my watching wrestling since I was a kid, and even seeing John Cena from the very beginning. And again, John Cena did the OVW route along with he was in the same class with Batista and Randy Orton and so and so. His first match, if I recall, was against Kurt Angle when Kurt Angle was looking for a challenger, and John Cena came down and did the ruthless aggression
Aggression. Yeah.
routine. Yeah, I was never a fan of John Cena. The only thing that John Cena ever did that I really liked was when he did the rap thing. And so I like John Cena as a heel, but I've always had a tendency to like the heels. But
Mhm.
here's here's what bothers me, and then this will give me my segue into my predictions for going forward. What eats at my craw is when if it's Michael Cole or whoever it is calls John Cena the greatest of all time.
I know.
Why is John Cena the greatest of all time? Now, to his credit, he does the charitable stuff. He's done more Make a Wishes, I believe, than anybody. So the charitable work he does is tremendous. But to call him the greatest of all time, I'm sorry, Carmela. Bruno Sammartino is the greatest of all time.
I
8
agree.
years WWF champion, and then
And
did
then
it for
four
another
more.
4 years,
And then four more. So
right?
he was 12 years a champion. And I
Exactly.
agree.
And so that bothers me every time that I say it. And my dear wife Harriet, who watches the wrestling with me every week, every PLE, I look at her and I say, "Why do they say that?" And she just laughs at me, and it's like,
I
I don't know,
agree.
but
I
but
agree. And
so
I think it's their way of they want to push him. They want to push and push and push him. And like I said before on my other interview on Lee Cole's podcast, I said that I
mm,
believe that they want to make him 17 time. They want him to beat Flair's record, period. That's their incentive, that's their goal. They want him to beat Flair's
right.
16-time champion. And
So
I mean, yeah, he has done a lot of make believe or make a wish. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. Make a wish requests. He has done incredible stuff. Okay, you got to give him props for that. You really do. Okay, but
yes,
and I also have to think to myself, he gets paid to do that too, as well.
yes,
Okay, if he
yes,
didn't
yes,
get paid on a regular basis, not by the Make a Wish Foundation, but by the WWE. I mean, let's face it. How many times would any wrestler do what he's done on their
right,
own with no recognition whatsoever? I don't know. I got to
yes,
think about that. But
yeah,
I agree with you. He is not the best of all time. He is not the greatest of all time. Bruno Sammartino, I agree wholeheartedly with you, was, in my opinion, the best champion ever. Okay,
ever,
ever, ever.
ever,
And there are other
yes,
people, yeah, other people that do not get the recognition. It's funny because I was a friend of mine was sent me a video of Mike Masters. Remember him?
hmm yeah,
He originally had that lock, that full Nelson, the hurt lock that Bobby Lashley has.
hmm
And he did it where people didn't get out of it. He was, I believe, the only one who actually got out of Bobby Lashley's hurt lock
hmm
and never got recognition for it. A lot of
right,
people that are lower on the totem pole who do these incredible things don't get recognition. And that's the problem because the WWE, AEW too, all of them, they have this one person, a man or a woman, they have this one person and they just push the crap out of this person and almost shove them down your throat until, well, let's see what we can do with the next guy or the next girl. And it's like
right,
they're doing now with and I know they have to make money. And I know these people are money makers. There's no doubt about it. But I mean, why all over the internet they had said that people were pissed off that Jey Uso won? Why? Why would they
why?
be angry that he won? He's such a good gimmick and he's such a good pull. He's such a good sell. Why would anybody be mad that he won the Royal Rumble? I don't get that. I mean, what's it
I
always the
think,
same three or four people?
well, first of all, I never thought from the beginning that Roman was going to win the Rumble. I don't know what they have in store for Roman. It sounds like they're
Right.
maybe going to do an angle with Seth Rollins after he curb stomped him onto the
I'll tell you what I
steps.
think it's
But
going to be when you're done. Go ahead.
okay, so going back to your original question, and thank you for allowing me the time to expound on my just incensedness when they refer to
Oh,
him as the greatest of all time.
yes.
But that being said, I think I think it would be a great story. And again, you think of the story, right? So Cody wanted to finish the story. It took him 2 years to do that. So here the story is for John Cena to beat Ric Flair's record and to become a 17-time world champion. Well, here's how I feel that they could do it. Okay, for Elimination Chamber. So here's my prediction: Elimination Chamber, CM Punk's going to win. So this is like the last chance to main event WrestleMania is the Chamber. I think CM Punk's going to win. He's going to get the WrestleMania moment that he never got but always wanted. You can say what you want about CM Punk. The crowd loves him. They've been chanting
Yeah.
CM Punk for years since he left.
Even when he
Since
wasn't
he
here.
left.
Yep. You're right. Yep.
Correct. Right. So Cena does not need to win the belt on his retirement tour for the 17th time in the main event at WrestleMania. He can win it at any PLE throughout the time period of his retirement tour. So my prediction is that Jey Uso is going to choose Gunther,
Yes.
especially after the way that Gunther insulted him on Monday night. And it makes sense. And I think that CM Punk and Cody will main event WrestleMania, whether it's night one, night two, or whatever. But I think that that's going to be the two championships. Cena will lose the Chamber. Here's another match he lost. Here's another roadblock to him winning the title, but he's going to win it. He's going to win it later in the year. And that's my prediction, unless there's a swerve. And the only swerve, so I saw something on YouTube. It was a behind the scenes thing where Roman made some comments regarding Cody again. So I don't know if that was just an off the cuff thing, if it was just a once in a moment thing. I don't know where they were going with that. But that's my prediction.
Well, let's go back a minute. I think what's going to happen is Roman, Punk, and Seth Rollins are going to do a three-way, period. There's going to be a big three-way with them because all three of them have history with each other. All three of them hate each other. All three of them want to kill each other. So let them go ahead and do it. John Cena, on the other hand, I don't think should win the Elimination Chamber because I don't think he has it in him anymore. Obviously, when the people stop steroids and they stop all that crap, you see how small he has gotten. He's gotten very tiny compared to what he used to look like. John Cena also is not a wrestler. He's a gimmick. He does the same thing, that you can't see me, the pick up and throw down, and then the jump over. And so he does the same moves over and over and over again. That's all he's got. All right. I agree with you to a point where they're going to have to let him win something before the end of 25 because he wants to get out of wrestling at the end of 25. So by the time 25 is over, John Cena will win something. Even if he wins a championship for a day or for a week or for a month, he's still going to be 17-time world champion. That is a given, I think. All right. Like you said, I agree with you on that. I don't think he should. I don't think he has it in him. I really don't. I think that Ric Flair, as much as I'll be honest with you, I'm not a fan of Ric Flair anymore. I was years ago. Not a fan of Ric Flair anymore, but I'm going to be honest with you. Ric Flair has earned his accolades. You understand what I'm saying? This man has busted his butt for how many years? Blood, sweat, tears. I'm talking real blood, sweat, and tears. where he worked so hard. You got to give dues where they're due. He worked so hard to win that belt 16 times. It was never just handed to him like that. And his opponents, okay, were not these little jump arounds like they have today. He went against Dusty Rhodes. He went against Magnum TA. He went against Ricky Steamboat. He went against people who were par or more than par in equality to him. Okay. So I think let him have it. Let Ric Flair keep the damn title for 16 times. Let another person who has actually earned that take the title for the 16th time. John Cena, they're just giving it to him. And that to me is messed up. I don't like it. I really don't. And it's funny because you wanted to talk about the podcast I did with Lee Cole. By the way, thank you everybody for watching. My 2 episodes, or they broke the 1 episode in half, got over 10,000 views, and I was grateful. I wish this podcast would get 10,000 views, but I talked about that, and I talked about the fact that that's why I think that John Cena is going to win, because they just want him to win, and that's that. But by the way, thank you to Lee Cole. I had a wonderful time doing the podcast. I had a wonderful time. He let me talk about everything I wanted to talk about, which was awesome. And again, my heart breaks for him because of the problems with his brother. His brother was part of what they called the Ring Boy scandal from years ago, and wound up taking his own life. God bless him. And it breaks my heart. And I know that Lee, everything that he does now, he does for his brother's memory. That's so important.
Yeah,
But that's,
I was
go
just going to
ahead.
say, I agree with you so much, and my heart breaks for the man. And is he used to do a podcast in a different genre,
Yes.
and I think what happened was when the Janelle Grant stuff went down and became public, then all of a sudden all the older stuff that had happened in the 80s, not just the Ring Boy scandal, the Rita Chatterley female referee, all the scandals started coming back to the surface as a result of the Janelle Grant lawsuit. And I
Yeah.
think that he saw that as an opportunity to then, okay, I'm going to now change everything. He actually handed his other podcast to his former partner, and that's
Hmm.
what made him start this wrestling podcast. And I just watched his last one, which he did by himself. It was a couple of days ago, and I think I texted you the link to it. It's only
Yeah.
around 17 minutes long. When you hear him talk, there's such anguish in his voice, and I just feel so bad for him and his family, and what he's gone through, what happened to his brother. But going back for a second, to the Elimination Chamber, if you think there's going to be a 3-way between Punk, Roman, and
Seth.
Rollins, yeah, then who's going to win the Chamber to fight Cody at WrestleMania,
I
in
don't
your
think I
opinion?
don't well, I don't think that 3-way is going to happen at the Chamber. I think it's going to either happen at WrestleMania or at another PLE at some point. They're still building that up. I don't think it's going to happen that soon. I really don't. Um, but it's going to happen. I'm telling you right now, it's going to happen. Also, not to change the subject, but I wanted to tell everybody that Elias, from WWE fame, has signed with AEW, by the way. So he's going to be Elijah. That's going to be his name in AEW. Elias, Elijah, whatever. But and I was trying to get him on the podcast too. It's so hard to get these wrestlers on podcasts. It's ridiculous. Half of them want to get paid, which I don't do. The other half, it's they're like, we were talking about this the other night too with Joel. Some of them, and these are men. Some of them are such prima donnas. Like, they still think after 40 years that they're special, and yeah, they are, but they're not all that. We want to hear your story. We want to understand what you're talking about. We want to know who you are. But um, like I don't get that. I just don't get it, you know. But anyway, I just wanted to say that, and I wanted to tell everybody that I'm hoping that the AEW will now have all of their pay-per-views on Max. That's supposed to happen. I would love to see the Australia pay-per-view in Brisbane is coming up. And I would love to be able to see that on Max because honestly, I haven't seen a pay per view yet from AEW because they go through your cable company. It's $50 to watch it. I'm not spending $50 to watch a pay per view, but you get to see enough of it on YouTube right after almost. So that
That's
works
true.
out
You
really
do.
well. Yeah, that works out really well anyway. But anyway, I just wanted to reiterate. And then when going back to Lee Cole, hearing him talk about his brother, when I spoke to him on the phone before the interview, he had said to me flat out, he said, would you be willing to tell what you're going to tell me to a lawyer? And I said, yeah. I said, but I have nothing to tell you. I knew Mel Phillips. I knew he was an ass from the time I met him. I never liked him. We did not get along at all. I do remember the boys being there. I thought they were what they were, ring boys, just putting the ring up, taking it down, running errands for the guys. Because a lot of the, and the girls, a lot of the young men that were there back then, that's what they did. They went and ran errands for the guys and put the ring up, took it down, and everything else. And the funny thing is that Lee said to me, he goes, when you guys went out after the matches to go party, was Mel ever with you? And I said, no, you know, I come to think of it, I've never, ever been in his company outside of, you know, the wrestling when we went and partied with the guys, you know. And I said to him, that's really weird because I don't ever remember him being there with us. And I don't know what he was doing. I can't prove it. It's just like the same thing. I was there the weekend that Jimmy Snuka's girlfriend died. Okay. I was there. I knew Nancy. I spoke to her. We were not BFFs, nothing like that, but I spoke to her. I knew who she was. I don't know what happened that weekend. Yeah, I was there doing my own thing, but I didn't see anything. And that's the part that bothers me because if I had seen something, if I did know something, believe me when I tell you, I would speak out. And I did tell him that I knew Jimmy Snuka was not a nice man when he was drunk or high. And I did talk about, you know, things that I saw him do. And I have nothing to hide. You know, I will tell the truth on anything that I have. But in all fairness, unfortunately, I could not help him with a lot of that because my focus was on the wrestlers, not the young boys. You know, it just wasn't.
Right.
And I feel bad for Lee. And I think, you know, if you guys want to go and listen to those two interviews, if you just type in Lee, or it's called Wrestling with the Devil. If you just type in on YouTube, Wrestling with the Devil, Carmela, and just do it like that, the interviews that he did with me will come up. We did interviews about so many things. We talked about so many things. I talked about my relationship with Andre the Giant. You know, I dated him for 9 months. I talked about my relationship with Ivan Putski. I dated him for 7 years. Talked about all the wrestlers that came to my house. Talked about how that came to play. I mean, I've, you know, repeated my story now for a while, but it's a good podcast. It really is. And, you know, give it a listen and listen to ours. And it doesn't take much to just subscribe. Okay. Like it, subscribe, and just hit share. It's very easy. We want you to listen. We want you to be a part of what we do. I'm going to let you talk for a minute, Rich, because I'm going to look and see if Randy got the link yet, because I didn't hear anything and he should be here. So,
Okay. You know, when I told you about his podcast, and I'm glad that he had finally reached out to you. I mean, he's built his Wrestling with the Devil podcast to over 10,000 subscribers, and I thought that that would, and I think the original thought of mine was, well, let him appear on your podcast, and then it turned out reverse. It doesn't really matter. You got to go on his podcast.
well, that was his
You had all those,
suggestion. Yeah, he
right,
wanted. He wanted because he has more
right,
listeners. Yeah.
right. But I will tell you, you know, when we first talked about it offline, you know, my goal for you was to help you build your subscriber base, because with all these podcasts out there on YouTube, regardless of genre, they're so oversaturated. And what you really need is you need a niche. You need a niche to be successful, Carmela, and your podcast has a niche. I mean, when you think about the old school, there's so many people that know about the old school, and the word needs to get spread. And I have other ideas I'd like to share with you offline as to other people for you to reach out to that, it has a domino effect. And one of
Yeah.
the things I was very, and one of the very, and one of the things I was very disappointed about actually was that, I watched both of the parts that he dropped. You shine. You came across so strong, so well spoken, and I'm thinking to myself, how many new subscribers is Carmela going to pick up off of this? And what I was disappointed to see is I didn't see many new subscribers afterwards. And I have some ideas. Again, I'll talk with you offline, but there's other
Okay.
people that I think that you can reach out to that are in the podcast world, that either if you get onto their podcast or you have them on your podcast, again, I think there's a network and it can spiral out, because the niche that you have, there needs to be a larger audience hearing what you're offering.
Thank you. Well, the thing is that, I mean, I'm chalking it up to the fact that we are new. We're very new. We don't even have a whole year under our belts yet. These podcasters like Hannibal and Lee Cole and Jim Cornette and Brian Trammell and people like that have had podcasts now for up to 10 years or more, and I'm really hoping that, we can reach these people, like you said, and I'd be more than glad to listen to what you have to say. It's funny, at work today, one of my coworkers said to me, I said to my coworker, I said, why don't you listen to my podcast? And she goes, why would I listen to your podcast? I hear you talk every single day. I said, yeah, but not about wrestling. She goes, yeah, I hear you talk about wrestling more than I want you to hear it. But anyway, she said to me, you're going to be a famous podcaster someday. I know you are. And I said, you know what? I don't see that. If it does happen, that's awesome. That's great. I would love it. But at 67 years old, I am grateful to just be able to reach a few people and maybe brighten up a few people's lives and have some fun, and have some people say, hey, that was a good podcast. It would be great if it got to be more than that. I would love it. But it is what it is, and all you can do is say a prayer and hope that God will jump in and say, come on. But we did pick up some subscribers. I am going to be honest with you. Before the podcast, I think we had like 67. And now I looked at it not too recently. I looked at it right after the podcast from Lee Cole, and it went up to like 101, 102. I mean, it's not bad. So just, a matter of, I think I'm going to replay Lee Cole's podcast on my Facebook as well, repost it, and, try to get people to rewatch it again. And, because there's a lot to talk about. There's a lot. And see, the thing is today, it's a lot of it's about scandal, and I'm not about scandal. I'm really not. If something's wrong, I'll say it's wrong, but I'm not about digging and trying to find scandal. Like now, they just mentioned that Brock Lesnar has now been mentioned in Janelle Grant's lawsuit.
Right.
I was under the impression he was in it all the whole time, but apparently he was mentioned, but he wasn't actually in the lawsuit until now. Okay. But see, again, I have so much experience with wrestling that reading or hearing things like this does not surprise me in the least that it happens. Like I said, I've seen a lot of stuff. I've been there, done that, and it's not easy to be a woman in wrestling, especially from 40 years ago. It's just not. And I've talked about this over and over and over again. And this goes out to the young girls today who are in love with these guys and who want to go see them and this and that. I never, and I mean, I never, ever did favors for them. I never brought them presents. I never, nothing. The only time I ever did anything was when very first time I met Ivan Putski In 1975, I had a little teddy bear about this big in a bag, and I gave it to him when we first met that night. And if you see the picture of he and I together, you'll see his arm is up like this and he's holding a bag. And that's got the little bear in it that I gave him. That's it. Even though we dated for 7 years, never, nothing. Andre the Giant, same thing. I wrote to him. Yes, we had a beautiful communication. We had a nice relationship. Um, Even Dominic DiNucci, who was like my dad, he stepped in when my father abandoned me, and nothing. I mean, I wasn't going to do that. I'd rather not know you or not be your friend than to buy your friendship or, whatever. And I saw how some of these wrestlers treated these girls. I saw it. It was horrible. It was ridiculous. The lack of respect, the lack of kindness, the lack of concern, the taking advantage of was ridiculous. And I got to be honest, I am proud of myself that I never let that happen. My mother, God bless her, always told me, if you're going to do something for somebody, do it from your heart. Don't do it because you think it'll get you somewhere. And always make sure that you get something back, because it's not worth it otherwise. She said, I'd rather see you do without, because she was involved in wrestling way before I was. And she said, I'd rather see you do without than get hurt. And she was right. And I never did. And I have a friend who's going to be on the podcast. I didn't get a date for her yet, but her name is Dawn. I've mentioned her before. She's very good friends with a lot of the wrestlers, and she and Tony Atlas are really, really close. And same thing with her. Everybody loves her because she was their friend. And she never did the things that other women did at the time, or young girls, or whatever you want to call it. And wrestlers at that time were pigs. I'm sorry. Most of them were just pigs, and they wanted what they wanted. And when they got it, they dumped you like, seriously, yesterday's news out in the street. Like I said, I saw Tully Blanchard push a woman right out of his room and into the next wall on the other side of the hall. And I wanted to go punch him right in his face. And I mean that. I'm sorry, but it's wrong. And that's what I want to do. I want to bring knowledge to people. I want to tell people that this is what I went through and why. And I want to tell young people who want to come into wrestling and stuff like that, what they should and shouldn't do, or how they should and shouldn't feel. Like we had the podcast about the Super Crazy. It's a very tiny, tiny independent organization that's relatively new. And I told them, and I mean this, anything that I can possibly do in my own little way to help promote them, I will. And that's, where Jeannie is right now, again, talking to them, trying to get, more wrestlers lined up to I want to eventually do a podcast from their wrestling school. So if anybody's interested in becoming a wrestler, male or female, let us know. Our email is 316carmela@gmail.com. Anytime, drop an email. So go ahead, Rich. I'm sorry I cut you off real bad there. I didn't mean to do that.
No, that's fine. We were talking, we were talking about finding a way to expand your subscriber base,
Right,
because
right.
because like I said, I think that there's a tremendous niche that you have. And when you talk about some of these podcasters, such as the Hannibals or the other people that you mentioned
Right.
that have had a podcast for 10 years, I admire innovation,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm assuming that you're familiar with Conrad Thompson, or who he is.
Who?
Conrad
Conrad
Thompson.
Thompson. No, I am not.
Okay, so Conrad Thompson is a wrestling fan, or was a wrestling fan, and I believe his full-time job was, I think he runs a credit company or mortgage company or whatever. But he started out with doing a podcast with Bruce Pritchard, and it's called
Okay.
Something to Wrestle With. And he has expanded his podcast space to such like top level former wrestler. Well, in Bruce Pritchard's case, it's current because he's still part of WWE. But he has a podcast with Eric Bischoff. It's called 83 Weeks. He has a podcast he had a podcast with Ric Flair. In fact, he married Ric Flair's daughter, not Charlotte, Charlotte's sister. I forget her name, but
Megan.
Megan, that's it.
Megan,
He
yep.
married Ric Flair's. He has a podcast with Jeff Jarrett. He's got a podcast. He had a podcast. Oh, he's got a podcast with Tony Schiavone. He had a podcast with Arn Anderson. And before the podcast started going on to YouTube, and they were just something that you could just subscribe to, let's say through your iPhone or, you know, whatever your podcast app was, that was his niche. And he to me was an innovator, that he was able to grow it. And then he wound up having these annual events, and they were called Starcast, and they were like three-day events, and he would bring wrestlers in, and it would be like a convention type thing. And it just became very popular. It had to shut down, obviously, during COVID. But Conrad Thompson, and now, of course, just like everybody, you know, you can get his podcast on, you know, any audio podcast medium, but he now puts his shows on YouTube as well. But I consider him to be an innovator, and he's been doing this, I would say, probably 5 or 6 years, I would say. But the level of wrestling stardom that he has, and his podcast, I mean, with all these people, I don't know how he can run a full-time business, but I mean, some of his podcasts go 3 to 4 hours a week. And when you you know, when you talk about some of these other podcasters that have been doing it a long time, whatever they've done or haven't done, they haven't done it to the level that this guy did. And I admire him for being able to basically take an idea from scratch and build it. You know, let me equate it to what Joel did with TWA. It was a concept. It was an idea. I mean, I remember going, I don't remember where it was, Carmela, but I remember going to one of his big TWA shows. It was across from Pennsylvania Hospital, and it was in some forum or some small
Probably around the
place.
Civic Center, wasn't it? Pennsylvania Hall, the Civic Center?
That's it, Pennsylvania Hall. It held like maybe 2,000 people or something like that. And I remember going to that, and it's like he had top-notch talent going on his shows. And again, a lot of those guys wound up going over into what became ECW. So Joel was an innovator, and that's who I admire. I admire innovators, and innovators should get credit for what they've accomplished. You doing this podcast, again, you're an innovator because you have this niche market. And that's what I'd love to see grow. And I know that it's new, and I know that it's young, but I really think that this podcast has untapped potential. I really do.
Well, I'm gonna hire you as my manager. How's that? You go out there and you find me what I can do to make it grow, because, and it's hard with a full-time job as well. I mean, I would love to be able to sit here and work from home and take care of my podcast all day, every day. Contact people, go in and out, do this, do that, meet people, run around. I would love to be able to do that. But unfortunately, I have a job, full-time job. And thank you, God, I just got a promotion today. So I'm grateful, very grateful. And it's a lot of work. People don't realize even our little podcast is a lot of work. It really is. But I plan on spending more time doing it. And like I was talking about my friend at work, and she's like, you don't have time to do anything anymore. I said, I really don't, while I'm planning this. And, you know, now that I'm, you know, got this promotion, I got to be working on planning stuff that I'm doing for that, and books and this and that. It's hard, but I will never give this up. This started out as being something that I could leave as a legacy for my children. And this is something that I'm going to keep forever. And I'm grateful. I'm grateful to have the opportunity to do it. And for me personally, the opportunity is phenomenal. It means more to me than almost anything. But yeah, I'm still trying. I got a friend now. Actually, Lee Cole's trying to help me too, get a hold of Wendy Richter. I want to try and get her on here. I'm supposed to be on Heidi Lee Morgan's talk show in April. She just contacted me about that. And I think, like, a little bit at a time, I'm feeling positive about where it could go, and I'm grateful. I'm really grateful for it. Um, but I'm open to suggestions. In any way. Like I said, I was grateful to Lee. I'm going to put the podcast I did with him back out. As a matter of fact, my first podcast was with Brian Trammell. That was an awesome
Right.
podcast. I just pushed that back up again. So it's like a little bit at a time. It'll happen if it's meant to happen. That's how I feel. But in the interim, let's talk about more wrestling, because I don't know where Randy Hales is right now. I just sent him a messenger notification saying that I sent him the link, and I sent him the link the same time I sent it to you. So I don't know what happened. But if for some reason Randy doesn't make it on the podcast tonight, we will reschedule him. And I just ask for your patience, because, it happens. It happens. And this is why I don't advertise who's going to be on the podcast too much ahead of time, because I don't want to, do that. But in any event, I am going to keep Randy's name on it, because he was, scheduled to be our guest. And like I said, things happen. He could have lost power. He could have, lost his connection or something. But anyway, in the meantime, if you had to pick, gun to your head right now, if you had to pick an organization that you right now like the best, AEW, WWE, TNA, Japanese, Australia, uh, Puerto Rico, Mexico, any federation that you can think of, or like Jeannie loves independence, anything you can think of, what would you pick if you had to pick something right now?
So if I had to pick something right now, it would have to be WWE. And I say WWE because of, being a wrestling fan when I was a child. Uh, and I've talked about this with you multiple times. My dream was to be somehow involved in professional wrestling. Not as a wrestler. I wanted to be a ring announcer. I wanted to be a play-by-play guy. When I was a
Right.
little boy, I used to go to sleep at night and pretend I had a mic in my hand and was like calling play-by-play matches in my head. When I used to go down to the Philadelphia arena, I used to take, this is 1973. I used to take one of those cassettes. They're the
Mm-hmm.
big rectangular cassettes with the microphone, and I would take it with me and I would call the play-by-play in my seat. And
Oh,
people would look at me like I was nuts. But
that's funny.
I
That's
well,
adorable.
and it's funny to this day. Somewhere in a box are the original cassette tapes of the play-by-plays that I did when I went down to the Philadelphia arena. This was before they had wrestling at the Spectrum, with the play-by-play that I did, along with the guy that I
Oh,
went with, which by the way was the guy that introduced me to Mel Phillips.
oh wow.
So yeah,
How
so
about
going
that?
back to why, yeah, so going back to why I say WWE is because when I remember growing up and every Saturday, 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and I'm telling you, I have not missed a weekly wrestling show, regardless of what it is or what it was since I was a kid. Never missed a week. It's the only thing in my life. People go through phases in life where they have interest in things, but then
Yeah,
they
yeah.
lose interest. It's the only thing in my life I've never lost interest in. And I say WWE because I go back to the original days of the territories and how WWE went from a regional promotion to not first a national juggernaut, but now an international juggernaut. And
Exactly.
they are top-notch production. They are everything they do, uh, just about. Of course, like you said very early on when you were comparing the WWE hiccups to the AEW hiccups, they don't do everything perfectly. They miss
No.
camera spots.
Yeah.
No, okay, but generally speaking, they have top-notch production, and their technology is way ahead of anybody else. What anybody else in other wrestling companies that have either some kind of television presence, or even if they just stream their shows on YouTube. And I say WWE because right now, to me, they have the most compelling storylines. They have they have the wrestlers with that want to, with certain of them, some of them that want to make me feel invested in their story. Sami Zayn is
Exactly.
a perfect. Sami
I love
Zayn's a
Sami
perfect
Zayn.
example.
I love
I
him.
wanted him so. I mean, one of the things that really upset me about WWE, and this was during the Bloodline, um, the heart of the Bloodline story, when Roman was just beating everybody, and of course, let's not forget, every one of his matches had outside interference. I can't recall of one match he did clean that he won. Maybe in the
Yeah.
beginning when he beat Jey Uso for the first time or something. But so Sami Zayn loses in his hometown. Drew McIntyre loses in his hometown. Why didn't they let the wrestler in their hometown have their moment in front of their home country, their family, their friends? That was very
Well, see,
disappointing to me.
this is my point. This is what I'm trying to say. They pick certain people that they want to push. Okay. Now, when Vince was involved, okay, more so, he picked people like um, the Hulk Hogan's, Batista, Andre the Giant, um, Ultimate Warrior, people that were huge in one way or another. They were huge, huge, huge. Small people or overweight people didn't make it in Vince's eyes. Same with women. Okay. Now, Sami Zayn, I feel, okay, has gone above and beyond so many times. That poor guy, to me, it looks like he never complains. He does whatever they tell him to do. He's only won minimal championships, okay? And I think he also deserves a nice championship. He deserves a good championship reign. And that's like the same thing with the Women's Royal Rumble. I thought it would have been very nice for what's her name? I call her Tiffany, Naomi, to win. I think that would have been wonderful because she deserves it. She's busted her butt for how many years? And they just don't give certain people a break. But listen, not to cut you short, but I do see somebody's just signing in right now. Oh my God, I'm so excited. I believe Randy Hales is signing in right now, and I'm going to give
Oh,
him a
great.
minute. And I'm going to put him on. Wait till I see I'm so excited that he actually made it.
That's great because I wrote down a list of questions I'm loving to ask him
He's
too.
great. He really is. He's great, and I'm excited to have him. But it looks like he's having a little bit of difficulty. I figured that might have been what it was. But anyway, in the meantime, like I said, I just really wanted somebody like Naomi to get it. Because I think she deserves it. She's like a female Sami Zayn. All right, we're going to try, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to try Randy Hale right now and see if we can get him to talk to us. Randy.
There I am, live in Washington,
Oh,
D.C. Has the old Lance Russell microphone in my damn hand, and I'm ready to go. Can you guys
how,
hear me?
yes, we can. How are you?
I'm doing good. What's going on, guys?
Well, let me tell you, first of all, I'm Carmela. As you know, this is my co-host today. His name is Rich. My regular co-host is not here tonight. She had to do something else. But
The hell
we've been
with her.
talking. The hell with her.
Yeah, she no-shows my show. What the heck?
We've been talking about all
Well, you
kinds of
got
stuff.
me.
Oh,
We got
You got
Rich
me,
now.
Randy.
I appreciate it very much. I'm tickled to death. Now, I don't know what kind of time it is right now, and I'm late. I didn't have any trouble. I hopped right on. I forgot about it as many times as you ignored it. I just happened when I got home. I went grocery shopping, and I didn't really have to. But I got my nephew's gender reveal, him and his wife party to do in a couple
Oh,
of hours. So
well, we'll try not to keep you too long. We just want
I
to pick
can
your
give you
brain a little.
an hour if that's okay.
Okay, that's fine with us. Now, let me ask you a question. Do you remember us coming down to Memphis 40 years ago?
No, I'm sorry. Where
Okay.
did you come to?
We came to put. We played. I had Rasslin Radio on the radio. We had Squared Circle Fan Club, and we came down to see Jerry Lawler, and we saw you, and we saw everybody down there, and we actually played softball with Jerry's team, and we went all over to Memphis. We went to Nashville. We did all kinds of stuff, and it was we brought a plane full of people down there about 40 years ago.
What year do you remember?
I'm sorry?
What year?
It was 80, I think it was 85 or 86.
85 or 86. I would have been there, but I wasn't in the office until 86.
Okay. All right. Well, I remember you being on TV, like with them doing a color commentary and everything. Were you there at that time doing that? Or am I wrong? Okay.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I was I didn't do too much on the TV show, but Lance Russell and I did play-by-play together at the Mid-South Coliseum every Monday night. And I'd go to Nashville, I'd go to Louisville.
Okay.
Go over. I graduated college in 84, and that's when I became full-time with the wrestling company.
Okay, well, we went down there. We were on, remember when Jerry Lawler had his talk show?
Yes.
We were on his talk show as well. And we spent a lot of not a few days actually down there. We had a great time. It was wonderful. Do you keep in touch with Jerry at all?
Hit and miss. Sometimes it's a real regular, and I haven't talked to him since he did my Memphis Wrestling Hall of Fame show for me in Jackson in September.
Okay. I'm dying to get him to come on the podcast. Do you think if you talk to him again, you can ask him?
No.
No?
He just doesn't do public talking anymore.
Oh, is that because of his health?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
From the stroke.
Yes. Yes.
I haven't asked him to do mine. That Hall of Fame thing, as I said, we presented. I don't know if anybody can see it or not, but the feature besides the Hall of Fame, oh my God, this is heavy, was a tribute. Can you guys see this?
Yes, we can. Yes. Wow.
It's the rivalry for that through the ages, Jerry Lawler and Bill Dundee. And we did a huge deal. We did a huge deal where tribute to them, and we had videos and all kinds of stuff. But I told him, I said, Dave Brown was out there, and I told Dave, I said, just right before you go on, ask him, I said, do you feel like saying anything? And he said just a few words, that'll be fine. But yeah, in an elaborate setup like that, it wouldn't. It would add too much stress for him.
Yeah. Well, when you talk to him, could you just tell him I said hi?
Okay.
Okay, because he has to remember me, and if he doesn't, I'll cry. But he should remember me. When I was on the radio in the '80s, he and I had a pretend romance going on the radio because he was coming up to do shows for us, and it was him against Tommy Rich, and I used to, joke around that Tommy Rich and I were involved, and then Jerry Lawler and I were involved. It was fun. It was really fun, and they both played along really well with it. But let's talk about you for a minute.
Let's talk about you real quick. Where do you live, and where does Richard live?
Okay, Richard, go ahead.
Randy, I live in Northern Virginia, around 35 miles west of Washington, D.C. Born and raised, though, in Philadelphia. And that's how I met Carmela when she was doing her Rasslin Radio show on a local AM station that you later went to WIP. But that's how I met Carmela. And talk about 40 years, Randy. So Carmela and I became Facebook friends. And when she talked about the podcast, I messaged her and I said, I don't know if you remember me or not. And I just gave my quick background. And in a split second, she remembered me. And after 40 years of us kind of going in different directions, we have reconnected and have rekindled our very, very dear longtime friendship.
That's fantastic. How
Yep.
about you, Carmela?
I am born and raised in Philadelphia. I'm a Philly girl through and through. But right now I live in New Jersey, and I still work full time. I'm 67 years old, and just loving life, trying to anyway. You know, when you get a little older, sometimes life has a way of trying to turn you around a little bit, but I won't let it.
That was sad. That plane crash from that medvac in
That was.
Philadelphia wiped out the neighborhood.
Yeah, it
That was
did.
sad.
Yes.
Yeah, it did. And I knew where that neighborhood was. It was very sad. But okay,
Yeah.
now you tell us something about you. How did you get involved in wrestling, Randy?
Well, first of all, you say you're gonna tell everybody about me. For anybody that's been living in a cave, where's my microphone? I don't know. And it's really a prop microphone. It's not even plugged in.
That's
It's,
okay.
honest to God, Lance Russell's old microphone. And so this is the
Oh,
microphone that, let me get it in the shot, that
it's
Lance
there.
Russell
It's
used
there. I
every
love Lance Russell.
Monday night. So for those that live in the cage don't know who I am the owner, the founder, the president of Power Pro Wrestling. Started going to wrestling, saw my first wrestling when I was about 10 years old. My first feud I ever saw was the fabulous Jackie Fargo and
Wow.
Big Mean Nasty Al Green, and that hooked me into wrestling. I started going to matches every Saturday night at the Jonesboro American Legion Arena. I started selling pictures, and I was Eddie Marlin's favorite picture seller, and that worked out because it ended up he was my mentor. And the last year of his life, I was as unpaid but proud to do it. Payback time, I was lived with him and took care of him for
Oh,
a year till he passed away. But I started
oh,
ring announcing when I was 14 years old. Then started going to the Memphis matches. Hooked up with Lance. Did Lance and I alternate the ring announcing, and then we would do the commentary together. And then in '84, after college, I started promoting towns, and in '86, I became Lawler's assistant when he was booking. It was he and Jerry Jarrett used to alternate running the company, and it was Lawler's time. And as brilliant as he is, he's horrible at details. I was the detail guy,
yeah.
and then it eventually all went to me. Assistant general manager, assistant booker, eventually general manager, and the booker, and it was a blast.
Oh, that's great. It's funny, all these names that you're mentioning, obviously I remember all of them. And like I said, we came down to Memphis actually a couple of times. And it was great. It was great seeing everybody. It was great being part of it. But in my opinion, and this is something that Rich and I didn't talk about yet, but in my opinion, Memphis wrestling literally was some of the best wrestling ever, ever.
I'm
Um,
not going to argue about that, for Christ's sake.
no, you're not. We had when I had a wrestling store 40 years ago as well, and we used to have a TV outside where we'd run Memphis tapes because my ex-husband knew somebody in Memphis who would send us tapes, and we'd run them. And Randy, I can't tell you how many people came to that store and looked at these tapes and was freaking out because they were so good. That was back in the day when wrestling was, in my opinion, real. It like was so real compared to what it is today. And my podcast is about how wrestlers back in the day had to forage for themselves, how they drove themselves from town to town, eating tuna fish out of cans and trying to sleep at somebody's house because they had nowhere to stay. Most of the time when they were in Philly, they were at my house. But that was what I wanted to try to talk to people about, is how important it was and how much of a passion it had to be for these people, men and women, to want to be wrestlers so badly that they would do that when they had families at home and struggling so hard. And Memphis was one of the key factors in exactly that kind of wrestling.
The top guys were making a lot of money. The Jerry Lawlers, the Bill Dundees, the Tommy
Yes.
Rich, the Jimmy Harts. You look at the Austin Idols and the handsome Jimmy Valiants, the Jackie Fargos, and the Tojo Yamamotos, people that stayed around 30 or 40 years, you know, they weren't eating tuna fish.
Exactly.
They were eating steak. The people eating tuna fish are the 1992 version of Steve Austin. When he was breaking into the business, he struggled. The Master of Pain, who ended up one of the greatest stars in the history of wrestling, Mark Calloway, Mark Callis, The Undertaker.
Oh yeah.
He did that too. Normally, being in the office, I either lived in Memphis, here in Jonesboro, or most of the time in Nashville, Tennessee, and usually the only night of the week we stayed in a room and Holiday Inn, something nice, and usually most of the time it was three people in a car. In the early days, it was maybe four: Jerry Jarrett, Eddie Marlin, me with Tojo Yamamoto driving. Back
Okay.
in the day. Then we had a van, and our production head, my good friend Randy West, he had a van, so he would drive on Mondays and not go to the rest of town. Then later, the clique was Jeff Jarrett, Frank Morel, who was the spoiler and the French Angel. I'm sure you know Frank Morel, and
Yeah.
he's a longtime referee here. So Jeff and me and Frank, and every once in a while Billy Joe Travis.
Oh, I
And
loved him. I remember him. Him and Jeff Jarrett, when I met them, to me anyway, they were babies. They were little tiny young guys, very young guys. And now, I mean, I don't know too much about them personally now, but you know, it's amazing. Last time I saw Jeff Jarrett has to be 20 years ago. But it's amazing how they were just little babies back then. And so much has happened since then. It's crazy.
Billy Travis passed away in 2001.
I know he did.
I think I'm right on the date. I could be wrong on the
God bless him.
date. Our listeners and viewers can check that out. Billy Travis was a hell of a talent. Then my last click, Wolfie D, a PG-13, Frank Morel, and me, because I always, I wouldn't mind driving on the way home. Everybody else was drinking or God knows what else. So I'd drive on the way home, but on the way there, normally it was either Tojo or Frank, because I would work. I had my briefcase in my lap, and I'd work the whole trip there, then drive the whole trip back.
Cool. Well, I remember Bruno Sammartino was one of those guys from years ago who struggled for everything he got in the beginning, because my parents were very involved in wrestling before I was. And my mom and dad knew him quite well when he first started out. And he struggled a lot. And a lot of the people did. I don't know if you remember the names like Tony Parisi and Louis Serdan and Gino Brito and all. Well, these were people back then who also struggled. And my mom, being an Italian woman, you know, invited everybody to the house. And back then they came, you know, we had wrestlers at our house all the time. It was great. And I always wanted to have that relationship with Memphis wrestlers, which I probably could have if they were up here. Obviously, it was too far away to go. But wrestling in Memphis, to me, was bar none some of the best wrestling I have ever seen in my life. And I don't know, is there still Memphis wrestling going on like it was back then? Because I don't see it anywhere.
Any stretch of the imagination, it's like it was, you know.
Yeah, no.
Territory days, just tough because the national TV and the bigger stars and all that. But there's several local companies. Nobody's setting the wood on fire at all.
No, I know. And that's a shame, because Jerry had it all. Jerry had everything running for him. And we were out there. We went to his house. We had dinner at his house, and he was with his first wife back then. And
second wife, probably.
What, back then?
What year was it?
In 80, it's the same year, 85, 86.
Oh, it would definitely be wife number two. That's not Brian and Kevin's mother.
Oh, okay.
That was Paula Lawler.
Okay. Yep. Paula. Yep. She was a beautiful woman, very beautiful,
Yeah.
and they were very kind to us. And we had a great.
First wife was Kay.
Okay, no, it wasn't her. You're right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't her. But we had, like, I can't say enough about Jerry and enough about Memphis wrestling, because so many people up here don't know what Memphis wrestling was like, except for those people who actually were at our store or who came on the trip with us. So that's why I wanted to, like, try to educate people a little bit about what Memphis wrestling was like. Memphis wrestling was the first time I ever saw uh, getting beat up in the parking lot and in the stands and where the food concession stands were. And it was like amazing, the things that happened, and getting thrown into cars and over bridges and into water. And like today, that's just happenstance. But like years ago, it was unbelievable. And that was where Memphis ate it all up. I mean, Memphis had it going on.
Richard, have you ever watched Memphis wrestling in your life?
Well, I have to tell you, Randy, I have my own thoughts about Memphis wrestling. First of all, I just want to go back to Lance Russell for a second. I don't think Lance Russell gets enough credit, just overall. They talk about the great historical play-by-play wrestling commentators, and they talk about Gordon Soley. They talk about Jim Ross. But I don't hear Lance Russell in that same conversation. And to answer your question, yeah, I watch Memphis wrestling. Now, being born and raised in Philadelphia, we didn't have access to watching Memphis wrestling on television because they didn't have cable TV back in those days. And all we had really, for the most part, with the exception of some other territories that eventually wound up on, let's say, UHF television, we didn't see Memphis wrestling. Everything I learned about Memphis wrestling was in the old magazines, right. The Inside Wrestling, the Pro Wrestling Illustrated. But what I will say, in reading about it and in looking historically back on some old videos, what I find incredible, and I also work full time, Randy, and I'm a chief financial officer. I have been for like the last 30 years. So when I look at things, I always try to look at them from a business perspective. I think the fact that they sold out, what was it, weekly or monthly? I forget. But whenever they had a show at the Mid-South Coliseum, sellout, had the highest ratings on the television station for Memphis wrestling of any show. And I think they were on, correct me if I'm wrong, in a morning time period. And Memphis
Saturday morning, 11
had,
o'clock. Saturday morning, 11 o'clock.
Yep.
And they had the highest ratings of any show on television. And were you there during the Andy Kaufman, Jerry Lawler angle?
Yes. Yes.
Tell us about that, Randy. Tell us something about that.
Well, it was different.
That was brilliant.
You get somebody from outside the wrestling world come in. Somebody had that TV show Taxi that was so popular, and he was a great comedian, and he was on the David Letterman show, and that worked into Lawler getting on there with that famous thing. Andy Kaufman was like a lot of wrestlers or entertainers I know. Back in the back, he's quiet, and Jimmy Valiant, handsome Jimmy Valiant, is just as a matter of fact, here's a story. I had him as my headline guy in Jackson to put into the Hall of Fame. Well, I was setting off stage, and Tommy Rich came and sat beside me and said, "Boss, I think you made a mistake." I said, "Won't be the first one." He said, "What mistake did I make?" He said, "By putting Handsome as the final guy closing the show." Said he's back in the back by the monitor taking a nap.
Oh my God.
not talking to anybody, that sort of thing. I said, first of all, he's 87 years old. I said,
Aw.
second of all, I said, the light's not on. I said, he's not in front of the people. I said, I bet you any money you want to bet. I said, I'll go $10,000. Oh, no. I said, he'll steal the show. He said, I'm not going to bet you any money, but you're wrong. I said, we'll see. Guess what happened?
He stole the show.
He stole the show. Came rolling in the Memphis, TWA. Tell all the ladies, handsome Jimmy's on the way. I'm a rocker. I'm a roller. Little fucky too. I was raised by a gypsy. Oh, handsome's cool. And I had him at the end do a fired up, wrapping it up, and his music boy from New York City came on, and I said, now boogie woogie down to the people, go to the people, let them mob you, and boogie woogie all the way out that front door, and I'll have a getaway car waiting for you to take you back to the hotel. So that's what he did. Just
At that age?
Like 20, at that age.
Oh my God.
Fantastic.
God bless him. That is unreal. He was always one of the best. My family, we used to love him so much. But getting back to the Memphis, I think most of the people in our area learned about Memphis wrestling through our store and through the wrestling tapes that we played on TV repeatedly every day that we had the store open, and a lot of people loved that stuff, and they were not wrong. And we basically introduced Memphis wrestling to this area. And then when my partner at the time, Joel Goodhart, he went on his own and he started an organization called the TWA. He pulled everybody from Memphis in there as well, and that started to promote a lot of stuff for him. And it gives people a whole incentive, a whole different outlook on compared to what's going on today. I think Memphis, like I said, Memphis had it all. And Jerry was a big part of that. And God bless him for that.
Is Joe still alive?
Yes, he is. As a matter of fact, on May 3rd, Joel's doing his final wrestling match ever. He's putting together a show called One and Done, and he's going to have a bunch of people up here from all over the place, and he's putting together like a reminiscent kind of thing of his TWA, and he actually comes on my podcast from time to time. So yeah, he's doing well, actually. He's still a pain in the ass, though.
Did you know a dude from up there, Joe Berticelli?
Oh my God, yes. I still talk to him too. He's a good friend.
So he's still alive. He came and, as a matter of fact, he designed and produced the Jeff Jarrett poster we had, and he was involved in that. He was involved in several things that we did and came around a lot. I'll tell him I said hello, please.
I sure will. Actually, he is a senator in New Jersey. I just spoke to him about a couple weeks ago, and I'm going to have him on my podcast as soon as I can. We're getting booked up really quickly, and I want to try and wait till after the May 3rd show, and then I'm going to start having people come on. Maybe when I have John Bersicelli come on, I can have you come back and you can say hi to him yourself. Would that be okay?
Yeah, that would be fine if I don't forget about it like I did today. Usually I'm usually done working at 4 and come home. Today I went grocery shopping.
Well,
hey,
that's
Randy,
all right.
there's a
Forgot about it.
Go ahead, Rich.
Oh, thanks, Carmela. I didn't mean to.
No, go ahead. Go. You're good.
Randy, when Carmela told me you were going to be the guest today, and me being, again, since I was a kid, I was a wrestling fan, and it wasn't just limited to the territory where I grew up in, because I learned about everything from either wrestling magazines or whatever. I was doing some research in preparation for some actual questions that I wanted to ask you once you had said that you were there during the Andy Kaufman and Jerry Lawler feud. And I mean, it was years that people realized that was all kayfabe. People thought that was 100% real, that there was real hatred. The whole thing on the David Letterman show just like happened instantaneously. And if you can just bear with me for a second,
Yes, sir.
I kind of copied. Well, I kind of copied and pasted something that I just want to read regarding that time period, and then I want to then preface that with a question, or a follow up with a question. So, on April 5th, 1982, Andy Kaufman took on Jerry Lawler at the Mid-South Coliseum in front of 10,000 people. Andy got backdropped on the night of the match, and then got pile drive twice. To sell the injury further, Andy refused to get up and wanted to be taken out on a stretcher and then an ambulance, even if he had to pay for it. A couple of months later, on July 28, 1982, the famous incident on The Late Show with David Letterman propelled Jerry Lawler and Memphis wrestling into the mainstream like never before. Now, I find it fascinating from a time period that all of this happened prior to the national takeover and expansion of Vince McMahon going into the territories, buying up all the territories, and making the WWF, or the WWF at the time, from this regional promotion. And then he just went in and invaded all the territories. So it leads me to the question, did anyone in that was involved in the Memphis promotion when this thing was so hot, did anyone think about doing a national expansion at that time? Because you would have beaten Vince to it had it been done back then.
The years you were talking about, what, 81 to 83, something about that with Kaufman. The interesting note about that, Andy Kaufman, when he wanted to get involved in wrestling, he called Vince McMahon Sr. first.
Oh, and wow.
Vince McMahon Sr.
Oh, I didn't know that.
He said no, because he thought it was too Hollywood, too show busy. Obviously, we know what his son did with the entire wrestling business, but no, back in those days, and Jerry Jarrett especially, but everybody respected the territories, and everybody was making a ton of money there. So no, absolutely no thoughts on a national expansion. No thoughts whatsoever.
Because they were making enough money on their own.
Yeah, they were doing good. Everybody was just doing well, but that's not even the main reason. The main reason is that you just didn't do that. You didn't cross the territory boundaries. You'd have opposition.
Well, that's true.
It's just a different thing. But no, never any thoughts at all to go national before. And honestly, here's the advantage that Vince had over any territory. Memphis for sure is one of them. Where was Vince? He was in New York City. He was in Connecticut.
Right.
And where were we? We were in Memphis, Tennessee. Where was Bill Watts in Tulsa, Oklahoma? You couldn't build a national company being based out of Memphis, Tennessee. You just couldn't. It's impossible. He was in the best location, and not to take anything from him, he took a lot of. This is what I say. The Memphis television show was on Saturday mornings, and it was live. In the early years, in the 50s, 60s, and up to 77, Channel 13, the ABC affiliate. In 1977, when Jerry Jarrett split off with the former promoter, Nick Gillis started his own deal, they went to Channel 5, a bigger signal and a bigger station, and it was local as well. So it was just phenomenal, not just in Memphis, but in the other weekly towns, Louisville, Evansville, Lexington, Kentucky, Nashville, Tennessee. My hometown, Jonesboro, Arkansas, was the territory. But, with probably had in the Jarrett deal, at the most, there was 3 people in the office. Mm-hmm. And that includes Jerry Jarrett.
Okay.
I mean, there just wasn't, it was small, and you couldn't run a worldwide company like that. So product-wise, Could it have been some of the best product ever? Absolutely. Production value, the way that they were taking it with the arenas and now to the stadiums and all this. I'm one of these guys that's not anti-modern wrestling. The money they do, the merchandise they sell, the fact that it's a global entity just amazes me. Amazes me. So I am a fan of modern wrestling. I really am. Still then, like product by product, my favorite obviously was the Territory Ace. I like Bill Watts' company. I like World Class Wrestling. I like Jim Cornette, Jim Crockett Promotions. I like Championship Wrestling from Florida. I like watching those. But now it just got bigger with pretty much one guy with the pencil, so to speak, driving the ship.
Exactly. Exactly.
One is worth billions and billions of dollars.
Well, I think that he went against. Okay, I'm sorry, Rich. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, Randy. Oh yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Can you hear me? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
What's interesting? Yeah, Randy. What's interesting, and I'm sure you remember this, Carmela, too. So what we were exposed to was WWF on the UHF station, but then all of a sudden, I don't know, 1981, 1982, all of a sudden, like what pops up on our television one day? World Class Championship Wrestling. What pops up on our television one day? Universal Wrestling Federation, Bill Watts. And it was just like early 80s. Like all of a sudden, these other regional promotions popped up on our television screens on the old UHF stations in Philadelphia. And, for me as a wrestling fan, I was soaking it all in because I finally got to see these wrestlers again that all I ever heard about was reading about them through the wrestling magazines that I would subscribe to and, get in my mailbox once a month. I don't recall that Memphis wrestling was ever broadcast on a local UHF channel during that time. Carmela, do you?
Not during that time. Not like. I think it started. It came after. Like I said, any exposure anybody had was at our stores for that because we had tapes.
Mm-hmm.
But it eventually started coming through. Yes, it wasn't in the beginning, but it eventually started coming through. Randy, I wanted to ask you a question. What was the relationship with you guys and Paul Heyman?
He was just young, getting into business. Jerry Lawler was booking, but I got to be the Hatchet job. We fired him. I fired him, but it was a Lawler decision because he had agreed to climb the scaffold at the end of a scaffold match in Louisville, Kentucky, and he backed out while he was out there, and so he was let go. So Paul is brilliant, fantastic manager. He was raised a different way. He was raised with the New York state of mind, that area. Say, in comparison, Jim Cornette was raised with the Memphis state of mind.
Right.
With Jerry Lawler and Jerry Jarrett influences. Then he went to Bill Watts, where he had the Bill Watts influences. Then he went to Jim Crockett Promotion, where he had the Dusty Rhodes influences. Paul was strictly a New York guy, and then he started going to the territories, became friends with Eddie Gilbert. Now, when ECW first started and Eddie Gilbert was booking it, Carmela, were you around in those times?
Yes, I was.
Were you very involved in it?
I was involved in wrestling in one way or another since I was 6 years old. So between my parents and me, yeah, we were always involved in wrestling in one way or another. To like with me, it was never except for when I had the radio show and stuff like that. Other than that, it was mostly having wrestlers have a place to stay at my parents' house, my house. I cooked for them. We had a bunch of stuff, and then I was a promoter. I did the radio show. I did the store. I did the promotions with Joel and my ex-husband, and we did all that stuff. But yeah, I was involved in wrestling, like I said, in one way or another for over 60 years.
Well, that's cool. I guess we all have different stories, right?
Don't we though? And that's what this podcast is about, stories. I love talking about stories. And it's amazing how we each have a memory of what it was like and then what it turned into. Okay. Like with you, when you started, I mean, would you have ever wanted to go to another federation, or were you happy enough where you were?
No, absolutely. A couple of times, as a matter of fact, after Ron Fuller's Southeastern Continental Wrestling promotion, he sold out to a television station guy, and Bill Dundee went and booked it, and Bill was coming back here, and I was mad at Jerry Jarrett at the time, so he wanted, he was trying to get me to go down there, but they went with Robert Fuller instead. So that was, because I wasn't around then. That would have been the only time I would have considered it, type of thing, because a lot of the same philosophies of Southeastern or Continental and Memphis, it was the same type of thing. So if I would have made a move, that's where it would have been.
Very cool. Okay, I get that now. But what are you doing today? How involved are you in wrestling today?
I do shows on my YouTube channels, the Randy Hales YouTube channel. As a matter of fact, I do shows every Monday and every Tuesday. My company, Power Pro Wrestling, we've done the Power Pro Watch Along every week, 154 shows. Well, this coming Monday night, I want to invite everybody to watch the Randy Hales channel on YouTube, or Classic or Memphis Wrestling on YouTube, or my Facebook page, Randy Hales Facebook page, the Memphis Wrestling Hall of Fame Facebook page, or the Power Pro Wrestling Facebook page, at RB Hales on Twitter, and the Randy Hales channel on Twitch. We do the Power Hour on Monday, but we have one show remaining, the final show of the series, show 154 from April the 7th, 1998, and we will show that this Monday. Then the Monday show will go away. Sometimes I do a special Randy Hales show that we may talk sports, we may talk whatever. I'll do review shows. I did one of the Royal Rumble, did a show right after that was over, do that. Tuesday shows Talking Memphis Wrestling, and that's a video themed show where we show video. We're doing a timeline. This coming week, we're continuing with 86, and so it should be very good as well. So I want everybody to like me on Facebook, and please subscribe to the Randy Hales channel. It's youtube.com/the @ Randy Hales.
Wow, that is awesome. Randy, you do so much still. I can't believe that. God bless you. That's wonderful. Are you familiar with a man named Brian Trammell?
Yes, he's a piece of shit.
Oh, okay.
Can we cuss?
Pardon me?
Can we cuss?
Yeah, you can talk.
He's a piece of shit. I said, can we talk? Can we cuss?
Yeah, oh yeah. You can now. He does Memphis podcasts.
He might do them, but he wasn't a part of it, was he?
No. That's
the problem I have. He was never a part of it, and he's the expert. He was one of these first people that started reading Dave Meltzer's Wrestling Observer. And one particular, and I'll tell you a story. You like stories. Richard likes stories. I like telling stories. And now you got me fired up.
You got me fired up. All right, go ahead,
shoot. And the last thing I would be thinking about, and in my head, would be hearing the name said to me, a person, I can't tell you how much I dislike this guy.
Wow.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you one night what the wrestling is. You said it's real to you, and it's real to Richard, and it's certainly real to me, by God.
Exactly.
And this guy, one night, I was in a program that was drawing with Brandon Baxter in Memphis for Power Pro Wrestling. He was on the front row where he bought a ticket to be on the front row because he was a fan and he didn't have any clue, but he read Dave Meltzer's stinking Observer. Well, he started running his mouth to the fans, basically smartening them up because they were buying into everything. And he said, he's the booker. He's the booker, and now he's in a feature match, blah, blah, blah. So I was wrestling Brandon. I raked his eyes, I threw him out of the ring, but I told him, I said, when I get back out there in front of that big fat son of a bitch, I said, I said, give me a hip toss in. I've told Trammell this myself. It was a hit. It was an absolute hit. I said, hip toss me into him. I said, I'll knock out every effing tooth in his mouth. And,
wow, yeah, back then you couldn't do that stuff. Back then it was all kayfabe all the way around.
And so Brandon, that's the only time Brandon ever disobeyed me. He said, he threw me back in the ring, so I got back in the ring cussing him, and he said, Randy will lose the building and you'll go to jail. I said, that son of a is worth going to jail for.
Oh my God.
So
just for that? Because he was telling people who was doing what?
Because they were smartening them up. You damn right.
Yeah, okay.
You damn right. I'd have killed somebody over that back in the 80s.
Yep, I get it.
Later on.
I get it.
Absolutely, just for that.
I remember, and you know what? You're right what you're saying, because I remember back in the day, you know Dominic DiNucci?
I don't know him, but I know who he is. Absolutely.
Okay, well, he became like a dad to me. Long story, when I was young, I lost my whole family by the time I was 21, and he became like a father to me. And he used to come to my house and, take care of me and blah, 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 and all that stuff. And he was very that's where I learned kayfabe. He was like, anytime we would talk wrestling, depending on who was there, or if he had some of the boys coming over my house or whatever, and somebody like my friend was over or whatever, right away, the first thing Dominic would say is kayfabe to everybody, and everybody just shut right up, because again, like you said, back then you couldn't talk about that. Back then it was real. And it was your heart and soul. It was a passion. It was more of a passion back then than it is today, I think, anyway. But
this is where we're wrong, because our thought process there is that if the business was exposed, then people wouldn't pay tickets, and if people didn't pay tickets, we couldn't eat.
Exactly.
It was a survival to support our livelihood. That was
family,
the reason for it. Now, what do you say now? We were wrong, because obviously the wrestlers and the promoters, everybody making more money than ever, and wrestling couldn't be more exposed. It couldn't be more exposed. I'm doing it right here.
Yeah, but Vince did all that. He's the one who changed it to entertainment, because he didn't want commissioners involved anymore. He didn't want to have doctors anymore. And that's where that's where I got pissed off, because to me, same thing you're saying, to me, ever since I was little, wrestling in one way or another was my life. It was my love. And to hear it being bashed like that over the years, it hurt me. It hurt me a lot. And now, like today, everything, like I was telling Rich earlier, like they will admit on television, well, so-and-so made a mistake during this match. He's supposed to lift his arm on 2, but he forgot. So we move on. How do you say that shit? Even today, how do you say that? And you say,
Richard, let me ask you a question. Tell me again, when we brought this up 30 minutes ago, your job now.
I'm a chief financial officer
Stop there. Chief financial officer. That's about money. Exactly. That's about money. Right. Now it's about money. And so Vince, even though there's a lot of old time wrestling promoters and people like Harley Race and different people were wanting to kill him already. I'll tell you a story. Again, come on, you like stories. When I first was allowed in the dressing room, right. Tojo Yamamoto came to me and said, I know Little Man, which is Jerry Jarrett's CB Handle, basically. Everybody called him Little Man. And Bugs Bunny, that's Eddie Marlin. Loved you.
Aw.
Said, but I'm telling you right now, Randy Hills, if you ever run your mouth and smarten people up, Tojo will kill you. And he meant it.
Oh yeah, I believe that.
He meant it. So
I believe it.
that's the background I came from.
Yeah.
That's why I was going to bust every tooth out of that guy. Could have got away with it. I would have shot his ass.
Well, can I ask you a personal question?
Yes.
How old are you?
Maybe a year or two younger than you. You said how old did you say you
I'm
were?
67.
Well, 4 years younger than you. I'm 63.
Okay. Well, there you go. Now you know that we're both from the same time frame then.
Right.
Okay. So we both share that same, like you said, like that same, it's real. It's real. End of story. A lot of people that, like you said, that was their livelihood. That was what they went home to their families and bought food with. And like, again, repeating what you said, if that got exposed back then, there would be no food. There would be no pay. There would be nothing because people would be laughing at it. Today, even though everybody knows the score, okay, fine. But they're making a ton of money because they turned it into entertainment. And that pisses me off to this very day. Because to me...
Well,
it pisses me off that we didn't do it first, to tell you the truth.
Really?
Well, yeah. Just to compare...
I know.
Just to expound on what you were talking about, Carmela, I was reading an article yesterday on a wrestling website, and the heading of the article said, when Jey Uso found out he was going to win the Royal Rumble. And then there was a whole thing, and he's quoted there and saying, oh, well, when they told me I was going to win the Royal Rumble, it was... Now, can you imagine exposing that 35, 40 years ago, ever?
No.
It was a different business, and it wouldn't have ever happened. But
right, exactly.
That he said that today in 2025 did not absolutely bother me at all. And honestly, it's real. And the fact that he did win the Royal Rumble. Did you watch Monday Night Raw this past week?
I did, yeah.
Yes.
And that promo to lead off the show and the tears, they're all real to him. It's real to him.
Yes.
And it was just fantastic. We just have to look at it a different way. It's a different business. Do I still never will change my mind on the fact, and you guys, whatever home promotion or you grew up on, more than pretty much with that, it's not 100%. Most people like the home territory, what they grew up in, better than anything else. And Bill Watts fans like Mid-South Wrestling, world class, likes the Texas people, they're the best. It's just Jim Crockett, the same thing. They're just loyal wrestling fans all over the country. The big deal, the main deal now, though, is not a group of 40 different promotions running the world. For the longest time, it was one, and that was Vince. And the WWE still controls the market share, chief financial officer. WWE still controls that, but at the same time, now they have a number two in AEW, and who has a serious, real deal television white fee from Warner Brothers. It's just same thing. Back in the day, Channel 5 in Memphis paid the wrestling company, and I think, Carmela, you're froze up maybe.
Oh, wait a minute.
Oh, no, you were just sitting still.
I was just looking and listening to you. You just got me mesmerized.
So Channel 5 WTV in Memphis, which was the NBC affiliate, was we were the first promotion that before you either bartered your TV, traded it for ads to promote the shows, or you would have to pay for the television. Well, the TV5, as you were talking about earlier, the highest rated show in the market, no matter what time, period, they, the TV5 paid the wrestling company $1,500 a week. Now, would $1,500 be a lot of money now?
No.
No. But was it then? Absolutely.
It was a lot of money then.
So Jerry kind of saw vision, that sort of thing. He was such a visionary. A lot of it was just the nuts and bolts of the wrestling product, but just from a businessman, by forging the deal to get paid for television, that was just absolutely tremendous. You mentioned earlier you came to Memphis and you went to the Jerry Lawler thing. So Lawler, the biggest star on the show. So Jerry and Jerry Lawler went to the TV station and pitched the idea, and we got a license fee for that too. And it was extra exposure on Sunday mornings to promote the Monday night show, extra payoffs for the wrestling company and for Lawler, and it was a cool deal. The Jerry Lawler show, I am sure, available on YouTube if anybody wants to take a look.
Yeah, we're on YouTube. We're actually on that YouTube on that show when he and his talk show and everything. We did a lot with him when we were down there. Randy, I want to ask you a quick question right now. How do you feel about AEW today?
I loved it in the beginning. I mean, because I know that monopolies aren't good for the boys and the girls or anybody else, and it was absolutely fantastic. The start of the run was just absolutely fantastic. The heart and soul of that company from the get-go was two people. It was Cody Rhodes and it was Jim Ross. Now, Jim Ross, first month, 2 months, maybe 3 at the very most, was the lead announcer.
Right.
That changed.
Yep.
They put the mask guy, what's his name? Excalibur?
Yep.
And Jim Ross, and I realize that it's basically because of health reasons, and I get that. He's 70 plus years old. I get that. Let me ask you about Cody. Is Cody Rhodes in AEW right now?
He's in WWE.
And not only by being in the WWE, what does he happen to hold? What title does he happen to hold?
The world champion.
Yes. Who was half of the main event the last 2 years of WrestleMania?
Cody Rhodes.
The biggest 2 grossing WrestleManias ever.
Cody Rhodes.
Yep. This is what I'm saying. They lost their heart and soul. Then here's another thing. I've met Tony Khan years ago. As a kid, he called the wrestling company and told me he wanted to write wrestling. And that was in the time period I was kind of getting with the program. I'm thinking 3 years before I'd have cussed him like a dog. I didn't know when I thought I was a kid. I didn't know his dad was a billionaire.
Yeah.
But he sent me some samples of television shows he's booked, and it was all WWF talent. And he asked me my opinion, so I gave him my opinion. Some of them, I wouldn't do it that way. But that's good. That's good. I like Tony, and thank God, because I guarantee you, 100% of the roster in the WWF would not be making as much money with the WWF as they're making if there was no Tony Khan, if there was no competition. So thank God. Do I think they've lost their way for long from the Punk thing? That was a bad marriage. I'm not going to take. I wasn't there, so I can't tell you about fall. I have a speculation. I really do. But still, Punk couldn't get along with Vince, and that went bad. Then he couldn't get along with the AEW VIPs or EVPs or whatever the name is, and that went away. And then that ended in fights and lawsuits and all kinds of stuff, and he went away. Then he came back. I believe I'm right in saying, am I right on this? Last year's Royal Rumble was his first.
Was it
he
Royal
was in
Rumble
that.
Or what?
Maybe Survivor Series.
Survivor Series, I think it was.
Survivor Series. What's the PLE? I can tell you when Punk made his debut because it was a huge surprise. What's the PLE where? Oh, it might have been the Chamber, right? Where they're in the cage and they're waiting for the 2 minutes to.
Yeah. That was oh God.
Elimination Chamber from
Elimination Chamber. No,
from 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Right. Wasn't that when Punk came out at the end and upstage Randy Orton and the people that won or something like that?
Yeah.
But my point is now he's back 100%. And are you hearing any drama there?
Yeah.
With Punk? Are you hearing any drama about Punk now currently? You're not.
You're not hearing it. No, but I'm sure it's there.
I bet there's not.
No, really? You think he finally learned? He finally learned a lesson?
Last ride. If he was the same old Punk, he wouldn't agree to that finish of this past Royal Rumble. Jey Uso wouldn't have been winning that thing, type of thing. Another thing I'm thinking, some of the stuff they're doing in AEW now, I think Jeff Jarrett is doing the best stuff he's been done in 5 or 6 years. I think Cody Rhodes is doing amazing stuff. So they had, from the time Cody left, then it got worse when Punk left, and it was people couldn't take it serious, and they were running big buildings and they were empty, and now they're running smaller buildings, and now the atmosphere, what they had from the get-go. First of all, people were tired of the WWE, and the WWE sucked at the time. Yep. Finally, AEW being a thing made the WWE up their game. So it's good for wrestling altogether.
Yep. Now, what do you think about Will Ospreay? Go ahead. I'm sorry, Rich. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, Randy, you could say the same thing back in the 90s. The WCW that beat WWF 83 weeks in a row made WWF up their game.
Yes.
So
absolutely.
It's almost like it's going full cycle in a way when you think about it.
Hey, you gotta have competition. Would
Absolutely.
Would Coke be as good without Pepsi? Would McDonald's be as good without Burger King or Wendy's?
Right.
They would not be.
Nope.
Wrestling.
You're right.
I mean, plus the fact it protects the talent, because if there wasn't a billionaire running AEW, do you think that talent would be making the money they're making now in WWE, and vice versa?
Yeah, you're right.
Vice versa.
You got two major money makers there running both of those companies. Period. What do you think of Will Ospreay?
I think he's. I'm not absolutely blown away by him, but he's very good. Very good.
I love him. Yep, he's great. He really is. And I think that they're not using him well enough. I really do. I think he has a lot more potential than they're letting him show at this time.
And the other guy that I really like there drew a lot of money in Japan. And here's the problem. Tony Khan and Dave Meltzer and others are big marks for New Japan. What draws and gets over there doesn't necessarily get over. And
here,
it just don't. I mean,
no.
It just don't. I think some of the best matches I've ever seen anywhere in the world is Okada and Kenny Omega ever.
Oh yeah.
I mean, was it Flair and Steamboat? No, but in the you name of, was it Lawler Dundee? Hell no.
No.
Was it Funk and Dusty? No, but it's very, very, very good. I think they're pushing Will Ospreay. I think very good. The person, I just don't know how well they're. I think they could do a better job with Okada. I don't want to sound like Jim Cornette. I'm not a Young Bucks fan.
No, I'm not either.
Not at all.
No, I'm not.
I'm just not at all. And I think Tony Khan chose the Guns, Omega, and Adam Page over Punk. But now let's ask that question. Let me ask you that question. Where is CM Punk right now?
WWE.
What wrestling company feels and in people's mind, the fans' mind, are in top of the world of the two companies?
WWE.
Who's the leader of the pack?
WWE.
When 5 years ago, people were saying, oh my God, Vince is going to get his butt kicked, blah, 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 blah. Now you read stuff and they're saying Tony Khan and AEW is going to go out of business. That's not going to happen. This is a cycle business. I've seen it 100 times. And I do think that right now, certainly we have two companies that's on WWE for a couple of years. When do you think WWE started going up?
Probably, I would say more than anything in the past few years.
And here is who drove the ship. And
AEW.
And also as for specific to their product. And it was a Vince McMahon call 5 years ago that it never got over the top, but it finally got over the top. But it was a Vince McMahon. Roman Reigns popped that territory, popped that company, and then the bloodline and all that. And then the fact they did it, you just don't see it anymore. They did 2 years worth, 2 years WrestleMania main events with Roman and Cody. So yep. Roman is the guy that tried to push for 5 or 6 years, didn't get over. They went another direction. They added an old school guy and Paul Heyman to be his his wise man. They put this whole deal together with the bloodline, added The Rock to it, and all piece by piece by piece.
And it all exploded. Yep. You're right.
It's
now, Randy,
yeah.
Go ahead, Rich. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say that whole storyline with Rock and how last year's WrestleMania wound up. The fans rejected the direction that they were going, and WWE had to readjust because they were going in the direction of Rock Roman, and the fans didn't want to see that.
No.
And I remember.
Yeah, I disagree with that, by the way.
Okay. You think the fans wanted to see Rock Roman?
No.
No,
absolutely don't. They wanted to see Cody and Roman. This is what I disagree that they changed their plan. They tried. They absolutely more than tried. They did make you. It was another way to elevate Cody. The whole idea from day one was Cody finishing the story, without a doubt. That night two. But to get Heath, the old school Heath thing on Rock, make him the bad guy, making him the villain. They made it look like he was trying to steal Cody's spot. That was never the plan. I don't think. I wasn't there, but I'm pretty much can read how a wrestling company are. So I absolutely think Cody or Roman and Rock. Not that it will never happen. I think it will, but it wasn't going to happen last year.
No,
I think No, I think we're saying the same thing, Randy. What I'm saying is that was the direction they originally wanted to go in, but then they had to pivot to Rome and Cody,
Right.
No,
which is what they
what I'm
did.
saying, no, what I'm saying, it's always was Roman, always going to be Roman and Cody, always.
Right,
Then
but what Rich
they-
is saying is the way they presented it. They wanted to make it look like it was going to be the Rock and
Yes.
Roman
yeah,
before
but
they
in their
turned
head,
it
that
around.
was never an option.
No, I know it wasn't. I agree with what you're saying. I think
Yeah.
it's just Rich is saying it's the way they made it look.
Yeah,
You
that's
know?
that,
Yeah.
and that's smart. That's very smart.
Yeah, because it makes the
yes.
fans feel like they directed the
Yeah.
action.
The
Yeah.
end game was always, which is an amazing thing anyway, but that it would be, man, I like that Cody Rhodes, because he gave up a 7-figure contract to go to the Indies, then to start AEW. In your mind, you think, and Cody said, well, I'm done in the WWE. If I don't help start this new company, they'll never want me back. So he left there thinking he'd never be back. He started that company thinking he'll never get back. Then what happened? Vince was down. Vince was threatened by that. And Vince, here's the thing. Cody took the risk, and his family's risk, everybody's, the way they eat, to leave job security in the 7-figure job to go out on his own and work the independence. Vince McMahon liked that.
Yep.
Because he bet everything, him and Linda, on everything with the first WrestleMania. It's just a fascinating world, a fantastic business.
Vince McMahon is no dummy. Like him or don't like him, the man is no dummy. No, forget it. Listen, Randy, I know you said you were going to give us an hour, and I'm looking at the time, and it's almost an hour gone. Now, listen, I am completely and totally in awe of talking to you. Okay. I could talk to you now for hours and hours and hours. All right. I would love to ask you kindly, if you wouldn't mind, would you come back again after May?
After May?
It has to be after May because we're booked up until May for that Joel Goodhart show coming up.
Yeah, absolutely. I had a good time. First of all, I'm sorry that I forgot about you. And second of all, I have a family. You know how much heat I would get if I didn't go to that gender reveal party for my great nephew tonight.
That's why. Right. That's why I'm
in trouble.
interrupting you. Yeah, you'd be in
Yes.
trouble. Exactly. But see, this is why I'm interrupting you, because I don't want you to get in trouble, but I want you to come back because you are awesome. You are an incredible guest, and I am honored to have you here. I learned more tonight, I think, than I learned in 60 years. I mean, it was amazing. It was incredible and a total honor to have you here.
And you got a rant. Hell with the Jim Cornette rant. You didn't know by mentioning Brian Trammell would set me off and make this a Jim Cornette foul-based podcast because I got hot.
No, you sure did, Randy.
Well, that sure took the podcast in an interesting direction, but a great direction,
sure
Randy.
Yeah.
I mean, Randy,
you rock.
Yeah, Randy, I don't have
Think
any
about promos. The best promos are when something's real. Because I think you have, and our viewers at home and watching, when we went that, I think they can watch this thing and see I'm interested in the show and I'm passionate and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But when that was mentioned, the temperature rose.
Yeah, man. You could see
and
that.
The art of a promo. I've been talking to you 99% of the show, conversation, back and forth. That was a promo.
Yeah.
There you go.
You're right.
You sell tickets.
I almost saw a little bit of your hair standing up too there for a minute.
Oh, yeah, I was hot.
Yeah, I know you were. Hey, I want to ask you a favor. Go ahead, Rich. I'm sorry. I keep interrupting you. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. You know, Randy, I don't have any background in the wrestling business. I'm just a fan since I was 8 years old. You know, grew up, Bruno Sammartino was my childhood idol, but my dream was to work in professional wrestling. I never got to live that dream, but first of all, I'm honored to have been asked to co-host this podcast by Carmela, but even getting to meet you for the first time And having this experience, Randy, I just want you to know that you have also helped attribute to me living my dream. Maybe not by being in the wrestling industry, but just by being on this podcast and having this conversation and having the privilege of getting to know you today.
Hey, same here. This is great. This has been a ball, and I think we've said bye-byes and things and all that. On my part, do you care if in honor of Lance Russell, do you care if I close out?
No, don't do it yet. Wait, I want to ask you a question. Would you please share my, when I put it up on Facebook, would you share it on your podcast or on your wall?
Make sure you tag me on it so I'll see it.
I will. Okay, now go ahead, baby. You do it.
All right, jam-packed, wild and woolly. We'll see you coming up Monday night at the matches. For Carmela, for Richard, this is Randy Hales saying bye-bye, everybody.
Bye-bye. Thank you, Randy. Oh, my God. What a guy. What a guy. Oh, my God. What a show.
I mean, did you ever anticipate it was going to go in that direction?
No. This was classic. It was unreal. Unbelievable. I'm so happy. I'm beside myself happy. Rich, thank you so much for being here.
Well,
I cannot tell you how happy I am. It has been wonderful. We did over 2 hours. Do you believe that?
I know.
Over 2 hours.
Is this like one of your longest podcasts?
Yes. It is one of my longest. Might be the longest. It's just crazy. Well, I'm happy as hell.
Well, you know what? If you have Randy on again, and if I'm honored to be asked to be co-host of your show again, let's see if we can break it to the 3-hour mark. Because I got a feeling that we'll be able to do that.
Well, what I'm going to do, if we can get Randy to come back, I'm going to have who else? Who would I say?
Don't say Brian Trammell. No. Well, don't say Brian Trammell.
Brian Trammell's my friend. I love Brian, but I'm trying. No, we were talking. I wanted to know. John Bersicelli. I'm going to see if I can have John Bersicelli on with him. Okay, we're going to end this now because I'm tired.
Okay.
I have to work.
Well, I'm tired too. Yeah. Well, I mean, unless you want to talk for another half hour, Carmel, I could go till 9 o'clock.
I know you could, but I can't. I'm hungry and I'm going to go.
I understand.
But listen, thank you so much, Randy. If you're still listening, I love you to death. God bless you. He's waving. I love you. I love you. You were awesome. Unbelievable. All right. I'm going to bring him back for a second. I had to bring you back for a second. I just want to tell you, I love you.
I love you too. I love Richard. I love everybody. Handsome.
I love you too.
Hey, here's what I want to say, but you came up with it. John
Bersicelli.
John on the show. Brian Trammell, no Randy.
Brian, no, we're going to have John on when you come on in after May. Okay.
I'd love that.
But I will be a pain in the ass this time, and I will bother you.
Okay, bother me.
Okay.
All right.
Bye-bye. Love you, sweetheart.
Okay, love y'all.
All right, bye-bye. Oh, my God, he's so great. Okay, Richard, you have a great night, and I'll be talking to you soon.
Too.
Jeannie, we missed you, honey. You missed a great show. That's anytime, honey. You were great. Okay, have a great night. Let me just end this recording.
You too.
Okay.